3, 2, clap. Hello, we are the Overall Nerds. Welcome to our second.
I told you about that. You gotta wait a bit for the clap because otherwise it overlaps.
Cool that. Hello, we are the Overall Nerds, and welcome to our second What If video. Today we are asking the interesting question: what if Phase 4 occurred in the 5-year gap?
So what we're kind of doing is like we're looking at what if Marvel took place in that time, but also what we would have wanted to see from that. What films, what shows, is it plausible, the negatives, the pros and cons, all that stuff.
What we feel is that Marvel really underutilized this 5-year gap, and although they have kind of addressed it quite well, I would say, with Falcon Winter Soldier and like Far From Home, you know, there was so much potential.
Seen the trauma of the thing. Like there's certain things in Endgame that fall flat because of the lack of engagement in the 5-year gap of such things as Hulk and Ronan and maybe Thor a bit. You don't really get that full impact because it's only been a year for us, and you don't see what they've been through. You get follow-up shows. Yeah. You get Hawkeye, and I guess they've done some stuff with Hulk a bit, but you don't really get the true character development that I think Marvel strived on in the previous phase.
And the two films we got in between Infinity War and Endgame were like quite lackluster.
Yeah,
which we talk
Ant-Man and Wasp
and Captain Marvel, which we talk about in our Phase 3 review.
And the thing is, those ones aren't even set in between us. They're anyway, so it doesn't really count.
We're not saying wait 5 years. We're saying do the 5-year gap.
Well, that's like my first question: like, how long would they have actually waited? I say the gap between Infinity War and Endgame should have been 2 to 3 years.
So Infinity War 2018, and let's just say Endgame 2021.
Yeah.
And then what? Do you think they should have started like the Disney Plus shows in between that time, opposed to just a bunch of movies?
I think you could have. I don't think you need to do exactly what they've done, like Falcon and the Winter. You could have done different shows and different people. I think the main Disney Plus show you could have had was She-Hulk, because the whole thing with Marvel is they can't actually do a Hulk film. They don't have the rights, whatever, or the distribution rights. Something that prevents them from wanting to do a Hulk film. So I think what you do a She-Hulk film in the skies of a Hulk TV show. Like, you still make it about She-Hulk, you still introduce her, and you have that lawyer side, the lawyer aspect to it.
Yeah.
But you also like develop Hulk and see what he's going through, and you build that Professor Hulk sort of like dynamic.
You know, I agree when you said quickly about the Thor, because these the 3 characters that were definitely in a very different place from Infinity War to Endgame were Hawkeye, Hulk, and Thor, and we really would have benefited from seeing like just 3 Disney Plus shows, 6 episodes each, just going into like explaining how they went from that to this, because it's never explained. All the character development is still basically on Iron Man, Cap.
Yeah.
And even a Black Widow show, we thought the Black Widow film could have easily taken place in the 5 years.
That's the issue, but it's a prequel, isn't it? It doesn't actually, it doesn't feel like it earns its place in the MCU.
No one really cared about it, because it's not one of those prequels like Captain Marvel where it's going to change the dynamic of things. The MCU is not very much different from if that Black Widow film took place before or after. It doesn't change from the way we view things. It's kind of just a random film that should have come out in 2016. And even if it had come out in 2016, it very much would have been, like a Ant-Man and the Wasp kind of film where it's just
where it's like, okay, it doesn't feel like a cinematic experience. But yeah, so I guess we'll plan our own 5-year sort of like thing, what would have happened in it.
Yeah.
So my 5-year plan, how I would have started it. I think you started with a TV show to set the ground scene. I think one show that we've done that is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm like a big fan of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The reason why I feel like it worked at that point is because at the current state of Infinity War in 2018, they did season 5, which they established kind of as the final season. The final episode of season 5 was called The End. They planned it to be the end. And then Disney themselves renewed them for 2 seasons, kind of implying that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was going to explore the 5-year gap, which obviously never happened. So I think with seasons 6 and 7 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you have if we're doing the whole there's 2 years between Infinity War and Endgame before we actually see the film.
Yeah. You
have season 6, season 7, kind of just exploring the world, kind of like the way Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. did in season 1 when the Hydra reveal happened and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. dealt with what it actually
the aftermath,
meant. So I think that's what Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. would have succeeded in terms of movies.
I think that's one thing we can agree on though quickly, is that they really haven't they've shown the aftermath of the Blip, but they really haven't touched upon what actually happened those 5 years, and they're not going to. Anyway, all we're getting now is just a bunch of flashbacks of people coming back or maybe disappearing.
And those seem cool. Like when you see it in WandaVision when Monica comes back, it's a cool scene that everyone's like they're all coming back.
I think it's Monica. I think it's.
There's Monica and then
Maria.
Maria.
I think Maria's the mom.
Maybe.
Monica's
But yeah, so it's a cool scene, and when she's finally like, oh yeah, your mom died, like you didn't get to say goodbye. It's a cool scene.
Yeah, and even Yelena, we got that seeing her come
Yeah.
back.
So it's like those scenes are some of the best scenes of their respective shows. It then kind of goes to reason that you would want a whole season of that, like a whole trauma kind of experience.
Just seeing how the world was, and like, you know, would this have given rise, I don't know if that's what you're going to touch on, like rise to like, maybe that's how you could have introduced Oscorp.
That was like my main thing.
Baxter,
I think you should have done
Four.
like a. Yeah, I haven't seen Breaking Bad, you haven't seen Breaking Bad, but you kind of understand it's like this good guy who eventually goes bad.
Yeah.
I think you could have had it like, of course we don't have Harry, but you could have had Harry at the start of the show with Norman Osborn that's actually good. Yeah. Harry gets taken away from him, and then during this 5-year gap, you have a TV show where like he progressively gets darker until you get
Osborn.
Yes, and then until you get like Harry come back to a father that he doesn't recognise, and you get that torn relationship, and then you kind of have Harry wanting to impress Norman because he remembers what his father was and all that stuff. I think you could have
even with Fantastic Four, like it could have been like the humans. You know, Avengers weren't doing anything. It could be like the humans' own attempt to somehow reverse, or because everyone knew, they knew what had happened. They knew it was an alien called Thanos snapping. Like, you know, some attempt, and maybe that's how the Fantastic Four could have, you know, experiment backfired.
It would have been cool if you had like either a show or a movie. Maybe you have an Iron Man film or a Captain America film where you show the puppet has completely lost faith in the Avengers because they lost, and because of it, the Avengers have disbanded during this. So that's why you explain why the Avengers aren't flying around trying to.
That could have easily just been explained in like a Disney Plus show, though. You know what I mean? Like not even like a show dedicated to that, but like, you know, the Hulk could have been the Hulk show, the Thor show, like anything. I guess what we're kind of missing out is that like it's easy to say that they can make a show, but like, what really would happen? Because a show needs to have.
So what would the main focuses be of this phase? I think my main focuses, or what I've written down, or the main characters of this phase to focus on, considering what we got in Endgame, would be Hulk, Ronin, and I think Iron Man and Cap are like your main players. Because Hulk, because of the lack of scenes we got of him becoming Professor Hulk, and I think this serves to Hulk, the character himself, that he kind of just disappears, dies. Maybe.
Basically.
I think you need Ronin because that scene in Endgame is so whack. I think when they show Ronin, because like the whole point of Ronin is that Hawkeye kills, right? He kills.
He does. He did kill in Endgame.
Ronin kills, but he just kills more violently. But all we see is that he slits someone's throat. You know what I mean? And it's like it's not like he's killing. Like he's not like he's killing like extra bad people. It's like he's killing like good people.
So what would you have him doing then?
I think you would have like a morally grey sort of like Ronin. I think like you would have had Ronin that takes pleasure in killing. Because a Hawkeye, it's an arrow to the heart, it's a quick death. I think you have Ronin doing like death by 1,000 cuts. Like people like slowly, like he's reveling in their deaths to a point where it's like kind of sadistic. It's like, oh, like this guy's like kind of troubled.
I think you can see what we're getting at is there's a lot of just jumps. And I get it, 5 years is a long time, which is why we're saying this. There's a lot of just jumps in characters and we've kind of just been forced to swallow it. And I'm not saying you always need to fill in gaps, but I'm just saying like when
such an event so big as this, you want to feel the weight. And Endgame does do a good job of establishing like their loss. But I think just having it where like these characters that like you don't see Spider-Man for 2-3 years, you don't see the Guardians for 2-3 years. I think you could have really developed that.
Yeah, because we knew they were coming back, but if you left it for 2-3 years, you generally would have started to miss the characters.
Yeah. Because it's only been a year since you've seen
especially since the Far From Home trailer dropped before Endgame even came out.
Yeah. Like you still get new footage of Spider-Man.
And everyone was saying, oh, it's a prequel.
It's like, bro.
It's going to end with him on the bus.
Yeah, it's like...
Infinity War. It's just like, no.
It's like, you kind of know what you're trying to do, so I think that would have made sense.
It could have also... I know we've had a lot of time with these heroes as well, but, you know, as you know, the depth we're getting with, like, Falcon and Wanda and all that stuff, we never really got to get that with, like, Thor and Hawkeye. Or I guess Hawkeye got his own show, but it's more about passing the torch now. You know what I mean? So that would have been a nice way to just really see where they're at, feel the gravity of the situation. I think a Thor show would have been really good.
Yeah, I think the reason why I didn't put Thor on like one of the main characters of the phase is because I think the shock of seeing Thor in this more like from this to that actually works.
It's also quite believable as well.
Like I think you could just said, oh, Thor's hidden, like, he's a recluse, like you don't see him, so you don't really need to show him. So like it builds anticipation to when you do see him, like, oh crap, like he like let himself go. I think the final point was like, what new characters would you build during this phase?
Oh yeah, like, as in like introducing. I think you could easily, as I said before, like a Fantastic Four, because it could have easily come in. Like they're trying to reverse the blip somehow,
and then they mess it up
and give themselves powers. You could add a bunch of, you know.
Would Shang-Chi still work in this, or would they just have to change the context and it would have been fine?
The thing is, it's hard to like make a story in the 5-year gap that isn't around the blip. Because like if you just start doing normal stories and everyone's acting normal, then it's kind of negating the purpose.
I don't think so, because like what are they gonna do?
Yeah, but the whole point is that they're meant to have like, think about it, like half the world has disappeared. Like it's impossible to tell a story where that isn't in effect.
You can have that in lines, so you can have it be like, oh, I would go to this person, but my father's dead now, or something like that. Like, well, not father, because you know he's the main part of the story, but this person's dead.
You can have a bunch of stuff like, you know, like because the Avengers are obviously done. Well, I guess they're not. Like Black Widow is leading the Avengers-ish.
Is she like? They have meetings.
Yeah.
But I think the way I would have seen it is like the public have rejected the Avengers. So like when they team up with whatever they've got left to like to help people are like, we don't want you here. You failed us.
You failed, yeah.
Which I think would have been cool.
Because we're getting a lot of that now, where people are quite happy with the Avengers, like thank you and everything, or like you know.
But it would be nice to see the public reaction during that 5 years. But like, what were people saying?
Yeah.
And I think you could have easily. I think during this 5 year, you could have built One World, One Piece.
One World, One People.
Yeah, One People.
One World, One People.
I think you could have not like make them a main focus, but you could have like put subtle hints in, something that like Cap starts dealing with.
Yeah.
And then he dies, and then Falcon actually has to pick you up and something like that.
I mean, thinking about it, I think like a Nick Fury show could have been really interesting, because that could have been your ins and outs. You know what I mean? That could have been like what's happening in the world. Oh no, he disappeared.
Yeah, he did.
Take that out.
But like,
I thought he didn't.
But like, the thing is like making our own. Like we can still say like maybe characters should have survived and maybe.
I think this could have been really feasible had like the main event, like if everything was reversed.
So the main Avengers died and
yeah, you could have like a film like, you know, Doctor Strange trying to work out to get everyone back, even though he kind of knew what was going to happen anyway. You could have had, you know, Spider-Man without Iron Man. But then again, you brought in Endgame, what would happen? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess because the whole point of Endgame is meant to be like a swan song to the main Avengers. So I guess you need them in it for a majority of it. It's a nice idea because it does help build, because there's no one else to go to, so it helps build these new characters.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think you could still build new. I think She-Hulk could have come through to help with the whole progression. I think you could have had the Black Widow thing.
Moonlight maybe?
Yeah, Moonlight works. Because he's so disconnected. But I think you could have had a Black Widow thing and still include Hulk again, because just because of their relationship or whatever they apparently have. So yeah, I think you would have built the whole thing. The Ronin thing, I would have given him a TV show where it's like...
Just him I think it's hard because, you know, I'm guessing the reason they probably didn't do this stuff is because all they knew is it's just going to be a depressing. You can't have like any triumph in any of these movies. Or any of these
you can win stuff. It's just like.
Now, how would the Ronin series end?
He can be facing. It's like a morally grey thing. So he wins, but you kind of feel iffy about it, sort of thing.
What was he winning? Like what? As in, like he just gives in to, like he finally gives into his like killing.
I think he's given in, like, I guess he's progressing, getting darker as he goes along the series. But like, he's still going up against bad guys.
It could be like his battle against himself, and then he does lose, but he is trying to stop himself. But then eventually he just kind of gives in, and then.
And that's like the final cut is like a full-on Ronin, and you're like, oh damn, and then you get Endgame. It's like, okay.
It would be nice, like little filling in. Like the thing is, the MCU is not like Star Wars where they can just go back and start filling. MCU once it's moved on, that's why everyone didn't really like the Black Widow film that much, because like, bro, like this took place 5, 6, 7 years ago. They don't care anymore. So it is one of those. I think, you know, final thoughts, like what we can say is that, yeah, there were some missed opportunities, but would you say it's something, I think the way it went is pretty good, but I do think what they could have done is just some...
I feel like it's a failure to build on dramatic storytelling, because of what we've got now, like the first film after Endgame, they're making jokes about the blip, you know, and they're calling it the blip. It's like, bro, half like the world is gone, like people you thought your family was dead for like 5 years. If someone comes to you, oh yeah, the blip. So it wasn't the blip to me, bro. Like my life fell apart. Like I feel like you could have done. You could have really delved into like if I know like the whole point of these comic book films aren't to like win awards, but like you have Kevin Feige being like, oh yeah, I think Eternals could have won it. If there was ever a point where you could have built your serious drama hitting award-winning whatever stuff, it would have been at this point. I think they missed out on that, and that's what we got was still like great.
I think that even the way it's going, I don't know. I guess we'll make another video about like where's the MCU going. But yeah, I mean, looking back, like we've always had this idea like should they have done more with a 5-year gap? But I think aside from some TV shows, maybe introducing some new characters, I reckon the way it's gone is pretty much okay.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think final thoughts. I think putting Phase 4 in the 5-year gap and making Phase 5 what is Phase 4 now. Did I say that?
Yeah, so Phase 4 in the 5-year gap, and then Phase 5 is what we'll be in now.
Yeah, I think it fleshes out all of the characters. I think it opens up new stories, which Marvel are trying to do now. But still, what we got is fine enough, I guess.
Yeah, more or less.
So that was that video. We're trying to do more what if stuff because it's interesting to like engage in what could happen. So we'll be doing more what ifs here and there. But leave your comments down below because this one's like a really interesting one. Like what you would have liked to see in the 5-year gap. Like what would have been your timeline? What movie would have came? What TV show would have came? And then like what would have happened there? And like, do you think it would have worked? What are the pros and cons? But yes, leave us your thoughts down below. Like, subscribe, and we'll be back with another one. Wow.